You know, we've been singing all our lives. I've been singing all of my life. My whole family, we grew up in the church singing, but I've been singing professionally for the public for over 40 years now.
When a marriage survives 4 decades in the spotlight without cracking, what's the real secret nobody talks about? Most people assume that longevity in love comes down to luck, chemistry, or the absence of problems. But what if we told you the strength lies somewhere entirely different? One of gospel music's most influential couples just pulled back the curtain on how they stayed together through decades of relentless pressure, public scrutiny, and demands that would destroy most partnerships. Their story isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about transforming how you handle it. Before the sold-out concerts, before the Grammy wins, before their names became synonymous with spiritual excellence, there was a single moment that changed everything. Imagine standing at a bowling alley on an ordinary Friday night. 2 people meet. Neither could predict that this brief encounter would become the foundation for a legacy that would eventually influence millions. But sometimes the most pivotal moments feel unremarkable when they're happening. Ron Winans, a respected figure in his own right, introduced his sister to someone he believed she needed to know. Alvin Love II wasn't a celebrity. He was simply a man with deep convictions, genuine faith, and a heart aligned with principles that mattered. What made that introduction consequential wasn't physical attraction alone. It was something rarer and more durable: spiritual compatibility. 2 people united by shared values build something that lasts. They discovered immediately that they viewed life through similar lenses. Their dreams centered on faith, family, and purposeful living. Their conversations drifted naturally toward marriage, children, and the kind of home they wanted to create together. Rather than following the culture's model of dating without direction, they approached this connection with intention. They prayed together. They asked difficult questions. They ensured their vision for the future aligned before making permanent commitments. By 1984, when CeCe was just 20 years old, she and Alvin exchanged vows in front of witnesses and God. What seemed like a simple ceremony was actually a covenant that would be tested in ways they couldn't possibly foresee. They pledged loyalty, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Those 3 pillars became the structure upon which everything else would rest. Then came the opportunities. Recording labels noticed her voice. Radio stations began playing her music. Concert promoters started calling. What began as local performances expanded into regional tours. Regional tours became national ones. National ones became international. Suddenly, CeCe Winans wasn't just a singer anymore. She was becoming an icon. And through every escalating level of success, Alvin made a choice that would define their entire marriage. He chose to support her calling while protecting their home. He never competed with her accomplishments. He never resented the applause she received. Instead, he became her steady anchor, the person waiting in the green room before performances, the voice on the phone during lonely hotel nights, the reminder that fame was temporary, but their vows were permanent. While audiences celebrated her voice, few witnessed the quiet conversations where Alvin encouraged her to keep pursuing her purpose. "Keep going," he would say, "but keep us together." Those conversations weren't contradictions. They were the very balance that made lasting success possible. As her career demanded more, the absence became harder. Extended tours meant weeks away from home. Recording sessions consumed months. Ministry commitments pulled her in multiple directions simultaneously. For many couples, this scenario creates catastrophe. The husband resents the schedule. The wife feels guilty. Distance becomes emotional before it becomes physical. Arguments multiply. Trust erodes. Divorce papers follow. But CeCe and Alvin refused to follow that predictable tragedy. Instead, they made a deliberate decision. They would strengthen their communication while their schedule threatened to pull them apart. Prayer became their daily conversation. Not prayer as religious obligation, but prayer as intimate dialogue between 2 people trying to navigate real obstacles. When uncertainty crept in, they didn't consult therapists first. They consulted God first. When disagreements surfaced, they didn't allow resentment to accumulate. They addressed concerns before they hardened into grudges. This wasn't about suppressing emotion or pretending problems didn't exist. It was about approaching problems as a unified team rather than opposing camps. Their family grew. 2 children arrived, each bringing new joy and new responsibility. Alvin Love III inherited his mother's musical gifts and eventually became a producer and songwriter. Ashley pursued her own path, carrying the values her parents modeled into her own decisions about life and career. Both children saw something their parents rarely discuss publicly. They watched their mother pursue excellence while their father maintained the home base. They observed that greatness doesn't require abandoning family. Excellence can coexist with presence. CeCe made choices that reflected her priorities. She brought her children along on tours when circumstances allowed. She said no to opportunities that would have required too much time away from her family. She turned down extended television projects when her children needed her at home. The applause fades, but your children remember every moment you chose to be present. These decisions cost her professionally, but they enriched her irreplaceably as a mother. As their children matured, another chapter opened. In 2012, CeCe and Alvin co-founded Nashville Life Church. This wasn't a business venture or a career move. It was an extension of the same mission that had guided their marriage for nearly 3 decades, creating spaces where people could discover meaning, experience belonging, and strengthen their spiritual foundation. The church became another arena where their partnership was visible. CeCe led worship. Alvin managed operations and pastoral care. Together, they envisioned a community that welcomed everyone, regardless of background or circumstance. They focused on practical ministry, helping families struggling with finances, supporting young people seeking direction, creating programs that demonstrated faith through action rather than words alone. Their legacy expanded beyond what they'd built at home. They were building a legacy for their entire community. Years passed. Their children became parents themselves. 4 grandchildren arrived, carrying forward the family name and, more importantly, the family values. CeCe watched the next generation experience the benefits of a home built on principles rather than circumstances. She witnessed her children raising their own families with the same intentionality she and Alvin had modeled. The circle continued. The legacy multiplied. In 2024, CeCe and Alvin reached a milestone that fewer than 5% of couples experience: 40 years of marriage. They celebrated with a professional photo shoot in Nashville, the city that had become intertwined with their spiritual mission. The images captured something rare: a couple whose eyes still reflected genuine affection after 4 decades together. Not the forced smiles of obligatory anniversary pictures, but the actual warmth of people who genuinely wanted to be together. And the world watched, wondering, what was their secret? CeCe didn't hesitate to share. She pointed to honest communication as the bedrock. When issues arose, they talked about them directly. They didn't let misunderstandings fester. They didn't interpret silence as agreement. They asked clarifying questions. They listened beyond the words to understand each other's hearts. This sounds simple, but most couples don't actually do it. Honesty about struggles is harder than pretending everything is fine. She also emphasized trust as inseparable from communication. Trust isn't built through grand gestures or perfect moments. It's constructed through thousands of small consistencies. It's the person who says what they mean and means what they say. It's the partner who chooses loyalty when nobody is watching. It's the choice to believe in each other's intentions, even when circumstances create doubt. Over 40 years, CeCe and Alvin made that choice repeatedly, daily, in moments both significant and mundane. But both acknowledged something deeper ran beneath the surface. At the absolute core of their marriage stood an uncompromising faith that wasn't separate from their love story. It was the beating heart of it. They didn't keep God in a compartment labeled church and church only. They wove their relationship with God into breakfast conversations, parenting decisions, career choices, and conflict resolution. When facing uncertainty, they didn't rely exclusively on their own judgment. They sought divine wisdom. When navigating disagreement, they didn't argue to win. They discussed to discern God's will for their relationship. Alvin, speaking from his own experience, described their marriage as genuine partnership rather than performance. CeCe's name appeared in headlines, but their life together wasn't about one person's success. It was about 2 people helping each other become who God created them to be. Success meant something entirely different in their household than in the entertainment industry. Success meant staying faithful. Success meant raising children who carried integrity into adulthood. Success meant building a church that changed lives. Success meant arriving at 40 years of marriage without bitterness, regret, or unresolved pain. Neither pretended perfection. They were transparent about the reality that every long-term relationship contains difficult seasons. Some years brought more conflict than others. Some decisions created disagreement they couldn't quickly resolve. Some external pressures felt overwhelming. But what distinguished their journey was their refusal to allow temporary difficulties to redefine their permanent commitment. They treated challenges as invitations to grow closer, rather than evidence that their marriage was failing. As their anniversary story circulated, old rumors resurfaced. Tabloid-style questions returned. Was their marriage as strong as they claimed? Had they faced the same temptations that derail other couples? Were there secrets they weren't sharing? CeCe addressed the curiosity directly, but refused to let gossip define her narrative. She acknowledged that yes, their marriage faced real obstacles, but those obstacles didn't destroy what they'd built. They refined it. The demands of her career created legitimate pressure. Imagine being married to someone whose work requires them to be away half the year. Imagine raising children while your spouse travels constantly. Imagine building a life together while the public comments on every choice you make together. Most marriages would struggle under those conditions. Many would fail entirely. That CeCe and Alvin's marriage not only survived, but actually deepened under those pressures, suggests something more than luck or compatibility at play. Their relationship became a quiet contradiction to the cultural narrative that fame destroys families. They proved that intentionality, faith, communication, and sacrifice can actually allow marriages to flourish, even in circumstances designed to fracture them. They're living proof that the most extraordinary partnerships aren't built through avoiding hardship. They're constructed through deliberate choices made in the midst of hardship. When you examine their 4 decades together, the story that emerges isn't sensational. There's no dramatic confession, no shocking scandal, no hidden betrayal waiting to be exposed. Instead, what emerges is something far more powerful, evidence that genuine love actually exists. Not the fantasy version promoted by movies and social media, the real version. 2 people making the same choice over and over again to prioritize their relationship above other attractions, their family above other opportunities, their faith above other guidance. Love isn't what happens when everything goes right. Love is what happens when you choose each other, even when everything is difficult. In a culture obsessed with controversy, secrets, and scandal, CeCe and Alvin's greatest influence might be this: their ordinariness. They're not extraordinary because they never fought or faced temptation. They're extraordinary because they faced those realities and chose faithfulness anyway. They're remarkable not because they avoided sacrifice, but because they embraced it as the price of building something meaningful. Their marriage stands as a testament to principles that don't make headlines, but create lives worth living. Faith over convenience. Commitment over circumstance. Community over celebrity. Family over fame. These priorities sound simple until you're asked to live them. Then you realize they require everything you have. As they move into the next season of their lives, their legacy continues expanding. The music they created endures. The church they founded grows. The children they raised are raising their own children with intentionality. The marriage they protected against impossible odds stands as a beacon to anyone wondering if real love still exists in the modern world. The question that started as curiosity transforms into invitation. If you're watching this because you've wondered about your own marriage, your own family, your own capacity to build something that lasts, consider what CeCe and Alvin discovered. It all starts with choosing someone willing to make the same choice you make. Not once, but repeatedly. Not when it's easy, but when it's hardest. Not because circumstances reward you for it, but because you've already promised you would. That's the secret nobody talks about. The secret that's always available, but rarely pursued. The secret that requires everything, but offers something nothing else can provide. A marriage that doesn't just survive 40 years. A marriage that actually becomes better, deeper, and more meaningful as those years accumulate. If CeCe Winans and Alvin Love's remarkable journey through 4 decades of marriage has stirred something in your heart, we'd love to hear about it. Please hit that like button and subscribe to Church Files Daily for more stories of real faith, real people, and real transformation. Drop a comment below sharing what you think is the greatest challenge modern couples face in building lasting marriages. Your perspective might inspire someone else who's watching. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in our next story.